to know that I cannot blame my parents in any way. I know they did the best they could with what they had, and I love them dearly, as I love all of my family dearly. My first memories are in Nevada, and I was 4. I go back this far because I believe these events and how I felt are prevalent to my character growing up. I remember being taken away and placed in foster care with my brothers. I knew that we were there because of something I did wrong. When my brothers, Kenny and Jason, had to stay longer because I got sick again, it was my fault. No one ever told me that it was my fault. I just took that feeling on for myself. When we all returned, my parents took the 3 of us to Pocatello, Idaho. When I think back on my childhood, these are the years I love to remember. When all my memories were good, warm, loving, and pretty normal. This ended when I was 9 years old. We were going to move to California to get custody of my dad's 3 other children. They were abused pretty badly, and my dad was given the chance to be with them. Before we left, they told me that my dad was not my dad, but my stepfather. I did not understand why, and I remember feeling that again I must have done something wrong, or that I was no longer good enough to be his daughter. And now I was also physically abandoned by a father I never knew I had. Arriving in San Bernardino is when all the chaos came into my life. We stayed at my aunt and uncle's house where I was introduced to the world of alcohol, drugs, and sex. I didn't drink or use, but everyone else seemed to. My uncle was loaded on something daily and would be sexually abusive to all his children, and this included me. We did many things for him, and he would still threaten us. This is when fear entered into my life, and I was responsible for the well-being of my family. Soon we moved out and became homeless. We slept in our car, played at parks, and ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We finally got an apartment, and this is when I met my best friend, Crystal, who would be my only friend throughout the years. During the next chapter of my life, I felt that it was only Crystal and my grandmother, with her faith in the Lord, that gave me any sense of unconditional love. For we were extremely poor, living on welfare, constantly having head lice and roaches. We moved around from place to place, and after a few years, my parents got custody of my 2 older stepbrothers and my younger stepbrother. Or my younger stepsister, sorry. Girl. Boy, was this to be a change for everyone. Unfortunately now, there was sexual abuse from my oldest stepbrother. I was already smoking cigarettes by now, and at age 14, I was raped at my own home in my own bed by an adult family friend. My parents took all the right actions and tried to protect me. Even though high school started off good, these past experiences led me down a path of unhealthy relationships. My first addiction was sex, and I was always in a relationship where I feared being alone. I had my first child at only 16, when I was just a child myself. I started drinking and using drugs a year later. I dropped out of high school and continued to go from relationship to relationship. I found myself pregnant again and had my second child at 19. Yet 1 year later, I was married to a different man who wanted a son of his own. So I had my third child by 21. This relationship quickly became abusive, and through my husband's family, we became religious. And I obediently followed their rules. I quit doing everything negative and focused on the many instructions of the church. I did not have a personal relationship with Jesus. It was do as you were told and fear going to hell. There were many blessings that I did experience there, however. 3 years into my marriage, my husband left me for a friend of mine. And he blamed me for this. I wasn't experienced enough, he said. Shortly after this, I left the church. And when I left the church, I left God. And I made a promise to myself that no man would ever leave me again. I did not realize that this promise would be almost be the death of me one day. Here I am with nothing, a girl with 3 boys whom I loved dearly, living on welfare since 16, no education, and alone. So I moved back in with my parents, returned to school, got my high school diploma, got my first job, and was a good parent to my children. I was happy, confident, and had the feeling I was going somewhere. Then it happened. I met the man I thought was perfect for me. And 2 months later, we were living together. 6 months into the relationship, I knew he was using. Now I would have to leave him or join him. I thought if we used together, we could quit together. That my sacrifice and my love would be enough to change him. So we started drinking, smoking, and doing drugs. And this did not bring us closer together. In fact, this is when the abuse really started. And I had a self-induced miscarriage. Due to my unresolved fears, that stupid promise I made myself, and all the substance use in our relationship quickly changed, became very negative. We were using almost daily, selling drugs, and I never said no to much of anything, especially to any type of sexual desire, and feared that he would leave me too. So with that, there wasn't any sexual experience that we didn't do. Bringing other women home at his request was frequent, and I began to identify as bisexual. I became an exotic dancer, and I lost all faith in mankind, while the abuse continued to escalate. There was no consistency for my children and I, and we moved around a lot, and I lived in fear because my relationship was chaotic and on and off frequently. During this time, I overdosed. I almost died and spent 2 weeks in the mental ward. At age 27, I became pregnant with a child I so desperately wanted. So I went to my best friend's house to detox, moved back in with my parents, and managed to stay clean and sober throughout the pregnancy. But only 4 short months after the birth of my baby girl, I started using again, and everything quickly went back to where it was before. 2 months later, I was pregnant again, and we made an informed decision on what to do, and so we decided to have an abortion. The moment I walked out of the clinic, life became dark, as if there was a black hole inside of me, and there was no escaping the destruction it caused. So I did the only thing I knew to do, and I numbed myself even more with drugs. I was now using daily and in large amounts, and during this time had my second abortion, as I spiraled down. Eventually, my parents had enough and kicked me out. They took my kids and had me arrested, and back to jail I go for the first drug charge. So now my journey to recovery starts. I enrolled into an outpatient treatment program even though I was using every day. And after a few weeks, I took off with my counselor, who was married and had a family. This didn't last long. I was in denial that Judge Morris would let me go. Right? Seeing that I really wasn't the problem here, until he sent me to residential treatment. While on a waiting list, I went back to my best friend's house to detox yet one more time, this time for 3 weeks, and I have no memory of that time. It was so messy. At Gibson House, I learned to live, shower, brush my teeth, make my bed, do chores, without drugs. What a concept. As I started the healing process, they taught me not to have so much hate within myself. However, I was IRD'd due to fraternizing. I had more problems, but still had a few months of sobriety after that through the 12-step program. I got my own place next to Crystal, and I got my kids back, except for Stephen, who I saw every other weekend. Then it happened yet again. I let my boyfriend move in, and within a week we were using. A month later, I was pregnant. And we hid my using. I still did everything I was supposed to for a while. Then I dropped out of my 3rd program and went to daily use. I thought life was getting better, because my daily use was small amounts, and the abuse was less than it was before. Denial at its finest, let me tell you. I knew I had a problem on March 20th, 2001, when I was using on the way to court. Judge Morris tested me, and my behaviors in court landed me in jail yet one more time. But not before he told me some brutally honest things about myself. Thank you for saving the life of my son. For that was the last time I used. A month later, my last child was born a month early, and he had breathing problems. We weren't bonding well since drug court took all my time. So now I was transferred to a 9-month program where I took my children with me. It was amazing. Sorry. A few months passed, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel alone. When I learned that over 79 people from the 12-step program came to see me at the hospital when I almost died. In this treatment program, I learned some really difficult facts about myself. I learned that I was a liar, a thief, a cheat, and I cursed every other word I spoke. I was verbally and physically abusive to my children, and I was an incredibly horrible mother. If I was to learn to like myself, I had to change everything. I found out my daughter was being abused by her father, and that gave me the courage to finally end that 8-year relationship. He became a stalker, and my life was even more chaotic than it was before. I feared he would eventually kill me, but this is a whole nother story. Through this different kind of abuse, I worked a full-time job and went to school full-time to be a substance abuse counselor. I attended 12-step meetings and worked with a sponsor. My grandmother got sick and I watched her take her last breath as she left this world. I believe I heard God, but I didn't listen. And I lost everything one more time, except my kids in recovery. I had to return yet one more time to my parents' home, where my mom continued to invite me to church. I was so afraid to go to church. My last experience was unfavorable, and I had broken every commandment, and then some. In November of 2003, I went to church with her, and my life really changed. Recovery taught me not to lie, cheat, steal, or drink. I even quit smoking cigarettes using the same program. To accept my past and to like who I am. It laid the foundation to my next journey. When I went to church for the first time, I heard the story of Mary Magdalene, who was to be condemned and stoned for sexual impurities. And yet she was not condemned by anyone and was forgiven by Jesus. Then I heard a testimony from a member of the church, and after his sharing, he was not condemned either. Instead, he was loved and supported by everyone. And I thought, wow, if they can be forgiven, then maybe I can also be forgiven. I was told to find a sponsor in recovery that had what I wanted and then do what they did to get it. So I thought this would work in the spiritual world as well. I found a spiritual mentor, Leanne Bobbitt, who is a remarkable leader for Christ. I listened, watched, and followed her, learning about the Lord, the Bible, how to receive and how to give. I am who I am today because of her. Her guidance taught me how to be an example to others. But the Bible changed everything. The Bible changed the way I think and the way I behave. Instead of dwelling on my negative events, it says in Philippians 4:8 and 9, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put that into practice. And the God of peace will be with you. The Lord has taught me to love and to be loved unconditionally. He forgave, to forgive and to be forgiven, to stand up for what is right and to not play the victim anymore and move on in His name. I have learned integrity and how to apply it. Words cannot express what the Lord continues to provide for me and my family. I have been blessed with a wonderful career. I have experienced the healing power of Jesus many times in my life, physically and emotionally. God has brought my family together and gave me a chance to be a better mother to my 5 children. He blessed me with an incredible husband, William. See right over there. Who on a daily basis continues to restore my faith in mankind. Thank you, my love, for being the man you are and accepting us for who we are. Your love and faithfulness is abundant, and I am so grateful to have you in my life. What really amazes me is that the Lord unveiled all of my secrets, took all of my shame and guilt, and turned around to serve Him. I used to ask Jesus, why so much bad? Why so many different negative things in my life? I didn't understand. I don't have to ask that anymore. Because 1 Timothy 1:15 and 16 says, Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the worst. But for that very reason I was shown mercy, so that in me, the worst of sinners, Christ Jesus might display His unlimited patience as an example for those who would believe in Him and receive eternal life. I know that through the Lord's healing power, I am able to relate to so many others in so many ways, to show God's ability to change people and show them unconditional love. For as much wickedness that has been in my life, Jesus has replaced it with so much good. Thank you, Lord, for giving me freedom, hope, love, forgiveness, guidance,